I can't even think of myself as a human being without thinking of myself as a New Yorker. I mean, because everything about my life stems from the fact that I'm from here. I've lived here all my life, except some years in Italy. But the opportunities to learn are so incredible here. There's nothing that parallels it. The nature of the museums, the libraries, all the rest of that stuff. But also the extraordinary people that the city attracts, so that you can study with the best viola player in the world here. You can study with the best painters in the world here. You can have that opportunity to be with people of extraordinary quality. It just, I don't think there's anywhere on earth that has that opportunity or that density of talent that this city represents.
So obviously the I Heart NY is what you're most well known for. I've heard you speak of it with joy, sometimes with disdain.
The I Love New York occurred because of, there are two elements, I think, that I've talked about this from time to time to try to understand it myself. Because I've never done anything. I mean, I've done things that have become understood by a community, like the Dylan poster and things like that. But I've never done anything that became as, using the current word, viral, as that mark, which went all around the world. I mean, there is hardly a place in the world where you can't find an I Heart something. I mean, and you would think, well, that must have existed before. No, not quite. The transformation there came from changing a noun into a verb, which you don't think about when you look at it. You don't realize that you have now gone through a translation process in your own mind. Heart means, oh, I get it. Heart means love. That doesn't seem very complicated, but it can't be too complicated. But that act, which makes you active instead of passive, I mean, you have to think about what something means, has to be easy enough to occur very quickly, and yet a true puzzle that must be solved. That balance is very hard, because if you make it more difficult, people just turn away and become indifferent. And if you make it too easy, they don't get the pleasure out of solving the problem. So this turned out to be the right balance of elements. And then there's the physical appearance of it, which is something else. There's something about the sensuous quality of the heart, both in color and form, and the kind of rigid, containing quality of the letters, and that conversation between those two elements, one of the things that make it memorable. Whatever it was, I finally cannot explain why and how it became so pervasive. Except, of course, the city and the state, it was really done for the state, drove it in its early days. I thought it was a campaign that would last a couple of months and then disappear forever. But here it is. It was done in 1977.
Yeah.
And I still can't go out in the street without seeing it at least once or twice during the day.
Yeah.
So
I'm curious about what your childhood was like in the Bronx, and if you felt like you were part of larger the New York City scene, or if you were just really a Bronx boy who then stepped in here for high school.
I grew up in a left-wing area and had the first interracial housing in the United States, the first place that a black and white family could live together, actually, in America.
Wow.
That was in the Bronx. It was essentially a left-wing, very socially aware, had some roots in the Communist Party, then it had some alternative Trotskyite divisions among them. It was a very lively, extremely politically conscious area. I would say over 90% of the kids who grew up went on to college.
Wow.
An extraordinary commitment to the idea of, first, democracy in America, and the idea of education as the instrument by which you could develop. And I mean, certainly it's an idea that hasn't faded, but it's
Yeah.
become more difficult for people.
Sure.
But that through education you could accomplish things that you couldn't accomplish anywhere else on earth.
Mhm.
And in that sense, it was a very optimistic neighborhood with the sense that things could be accomplished.
And how did you end up picking Woodstock as a
Well,
place
we
to
just
be?
had this idea that it would be very funny
Mhm.
to take the studio on a vacation during
Okay.
the summer.
Okay.
And so it was really crude because this was all pre-computer and
Mhm.
pre-cell phone and pre-everything. And so we all moved up there and we had a job to do and we would do it and we'd put it on the bus and then somebody would pick it up here at the bus station and deliver it to the client. It was very funny. And it was really because we thought it would be an amusing idea to move the whole studio out of the city. And we did. We only did it a couple times. I mean, at a certain point it became impractical.
Sure.
But it was a great adventure while we did it. But we loved Woodstock. It never got chic.
Yeah.
One of the great things about it, it didn't become, excuse me in this context,
Go for it.
Hamptonized. And so it still had the kind of archaic and ordinary working class attribute, as well as a lot of people who are hiding out. The nicest thing about Woodstock is the fact that it never, for one reason or another, became a tourist attraction. Once you'd been there, there was no reason to go back, except for living there, which is something else.
I don't know if you have suffered artistic block or if fear about certain projects or how things might go creeps in. How do you refocus?
Well, what do you do with doubt? You know, when you doubt what you do, I said, you embrace it, because doubt is the great device for inquiry. You know, in design, you always have to be purposeful, but if you're too purposeful, it leads you to, as we were talking earlier, predictable solutions or inevitable solutions that may be without the imagination, but just appropriate. You know? So that question, that balance between not knowing what you're doing and professional skill at what you're doing, there's a dialectic between those two that you have to get right. Because if you know too much about what you're doing before you do it, the work is half dead when it arrives.